Thanks everybody for joining. My name is Glen Shok. I'm the VP of Product Marketing for Panzura. I am a marketing person, but also somewhat technical. I see a lot of names in here that are existing customers, so thank you for joining. I also see a lot of names on here that are not. So what I'm going to do is go pretty quickly through CloudFS, what the architecture looks like, and then why the features in 8.5 Adapt are kind of awesome to be released all at the same time and are focused towards enterprise reliability of CloudFS. So let's kick this off. All right, so this is the CloudFS side of the house. As those of you that have been following Panzura know, we kind of now have two sides of the house. We have the CloudFS global file system, hybrid cloud global file system, and then we also have Symphony. Symphony is open systems based. It is an unstructured data management platform. I will be doing webinars on that shortly. The first one will be on metadata harvesting, as well as training an LLM on unstructured data, any unstructured data. So not only CloudFS. So keep an eye out for that. It's pretty neat tech. So today's webinar is going to be specifically around CloudFS and the features in 8.5 release. But those of you new to Panzura, let me quickly go over the CloudFS side of the house. So Panzura's CloudFS is a global file system intended for hybrid cloud. So it can be on-premises. The object store backend can both be on-prem as well as in private or public cloud. And it is an immutable file system, right? So basically we make it very fast, locally accessible. The backend is in cloud, but also as immune to ransomware as you're going to get. Those of you following Gartner have probably heard of the concept of cyber storage now. Gartner has been pitching that for a couple of years, and Panzura is a leader in that cyber storage space because it's a mixture of security as well as storage. CloudFS is our global file system, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We have other products that attach to CloudFS. The first is Panzura Data Services around search and audit. I will be discussing features that got added at the earlier part of the year in Panzura Data Services, specifically around audit. It's really awesome. If you're an existing PDS or Panzura Data Services customer, it was free to you. We'll be talking about detect and rescue. That is also our ransomware prevention and interdiction option for Panzura Data Services. And then lastly, Panzura Edge, which pushes the value of the global file system, all the audit capabilities, the immutability out to your desktop, the Mac, the PC, iPhone, Android. So you have access to the global file system with no VPN. Again, these are all add-ons. If you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out. My email is in the chat. And I can talk to you about really anything that we go over today. All right. So let's really quickly do a primer on CloudFS. So CloudFS consists of two components. They're the CloudFS nodes that sit on premises or in cloud and are an edge device intended for NFS and SMB access locally within a building for cloud applications and all that sort of thing. But that is the head end of a CloudFS system. The back end is the object store. The object store, as you can see, we support a lot of them natively. And the back end is the single source of truth for the entire global file system. That means that all of these CloudFS nodes sitting at all these locations globally talk to and commit data to this back-end object store. The CloudFS nodes will also communicate with each other to exchange lock information and to exchange quick updates if we're doing something called byte range locking, which we'll talk about in a second, that allows for global collaboration for the types of files that support byte range locking, such as AutoCAD, Revit, Office 365 applications. So you can basically edit one cell with an Excel spreadsheet as opposed to opening the entire thing for a lock. So you can collaborate within the spreadsheet, within Word, within Revit, within AutoCAD, and all that can happen globally. And they all do the commits locally to cache, and then those commits are pushed to the backend object store, thus creating an immutable global file system that is also hybrid cloud, because you can do the same thing with applications. Cloud applications that need access to unstructured data can access all of this, such as an LLM, for example, can access all of this locally to the cloud region of that application, hopefully also locally to the cloud region of where the object store is, so that you have no egress fees to do such things. Okay, that was the fast version. Yeah, so existing CloudFS can do Office multi-user, multi-edit. Yeah, that's byte range locking. So that functionality has been added to some of the Office 365 apps relatively recently, and others have had it for a long time. For example, Excel has had that function for a while, but Word, I think, just implemented it. So you can open the same file in the US and in EMEA, and both can edit the same file, because the software supports the concept of a byte range lock. And then you can look that up on Google. It's called BYTE range locking. So this is a open standard. It's also supported by AutoCAD, Revit, a bunch of manufacturing engineering applications. Cool, Brian. We can reach out, both John and Brian. We can reach out and show you a demo. Awesome. Okay, so that's the fast version. And again, this is an immutable file system, allows for quick recovery if you get encrypted, all those sort of things. Okay, so far in 2025, prior to the release of 8.5, we also had some awesome stuff. I wrote some blogs on it, but I want to go over that here. We are FIPS 140-3 certified. None of our competition has FIPS 140-3 certification. This certification is required for CMMC 2.0. So if you are building out an environment that is CMMC, you have to have FIPS 140-3, and we're the only global hybrid cloud file system in the space to support that. I believe that some of the hyperscalers for their local file systems have FIPS 140-3. Some are still on 140-2. It has been sunsetted but not expired, so people have an opportunity to catch up. But this process takes a couple of years, and none of our direct competition has that capability. It's kind of awesome. Something else that we've released, if you're a Panzura Data Services for search and audit customer, you have a new feature that is somewhat awesome, and I want to take a minute to discuss it. That feature is alerting, real-time alerting for audit policies. What's an audit policy? An audit policy is you can set that on a user, you can set it on a folder, you can set it on files. And what you can do is basically say there's a certain threshold. And I want to monitor anybody that exceeds this threshold. For example, let's say that I am a VP at Panzura. And as you all know, I don't do anything. So if I don't do anything and I maybe touch 1 or 2 files a day, if I'm moving 20, 30, 50, 100, 1,000 files, copying them, moving them, deleting them, doing anything nefarious, maybe somebody should be alerted on that. And that's what will happen. So you can basically figure out what your user should be doing and then set alert thresholds on anything above that. Why would you do this? Data exfil. So there's 2 types of data exfiltration that can happen. 80% of the time, data exfiltration happens because you got hit with ransomware / malware. So before you get encrypted, that malware or ransomware will try to exfiltrate the data, and basically either they'll hold you ransom for the decryption of your data, which in the case of Panzura, that's not going to work because you can recover from any encrypted data. If that doesn't work, then what they'll do is they'll try to blackmail you and say that they'll release the data that they exfiltrated if you don't pay up. And in that case, if your data is important, then yes, no alerts, exactly. If that data is important to you or it's important to your customers to not be released, you're going to pay. And they still might release it. You don't know. So with these thresholds, any massive copy operations, you'll immediately get an alert. That's free inside of Panzura Data Services Search and Audit. So if you're already a customer, go to town. It's in our documentation. You can call support for help. You can reach out. We'll help you set it up. And it is your policies. In the future, thanks for attending this webinar. So I'll tell you what's coming. What's coming are automated settings. And basically what we will learn is how the users act. For example, if I only touch 1 to 5 files a day, the system will learn that automatically and then either send you an alert or it will knock me off the network, knock me off access of the system if I'm doing more than that. So that's coming for Panzura Data Services. And again, 80% of that is ransomware. 20% are just malicious people doing this internally, right? Internal people like, I guess Snowden, moving that data out, right? So it's something good to protect yourself. Right now, the attributes are set by you. In the future, they will be automatic, which is really cool. And that's AI-based, and we're using cloud-based AI to kind of figure out what the users are doing without actually seeing the information. It's just metadata based. Okay, so now let's talk about 8.5 and all the cool features that we've released and why they're important. Historically, no matter how many sites you've again had one single source of truth and the backend object store, unless you've done cloud mirroring, in which case it was a write split to a second object store, preferably in a different cloud, and it would be a failover. So that's the only time you didn't have one object store is when you had two. For active passive failover, if you lost AWS or Azure connectivity, it would fail over to like a Backblaze or Wasabi or whatever. What we have announced is the concept of a regional store. This is awesome on several levels. First of all, if you're a customer that is global, and I see a couple of you here, if let's say the red area is the US and green is EMEA, and let's say you have folks in Asia, and during the US hours, people were modifying a large CAD file, for example. What would have to happen for the folks in EMEA and the folks in Asia is, I know some of you are out there doing a pre-warming of the cache, which means you're accessing that file before your users come in an automated fashion so that it would sit in the cache of the CloudFS node so that they wouldn't have to wait for an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour download of a massive file, right? What regional store allows is up to 4 copies of that object store in the back end that are all active. So what's happening is that we're using AWS or Azure to sync on the back end all of these object stores asynchronously, but at rapid breakneck speeds, so that the folks in the US, the folks in EMEA, and if you have a third, the folks in Asia, are all accessing their own object stores that are all copies of one another. Which means no more pre-warming of the cache. It means all local or relatively local IO happening to the local object store. And again, this all has to be within AWS, or it all has to be within Azure because we're using their synchronization services. But we've had customers beta testing this, and they've gone from hours to get new data, like to EMEA from the US, to minutes. Brian, good question. That was my first question when engineering explained this to me. What about locking? Locking is not impacted at all, and here's why. There's 2 types of locks that we support. Again, we have the byte range lock and we have the full file lock, right? The whole file is locked for writes. So let me take you through this scenario. Let's say I'm here, I'm in the US, I'm in California, and this is US West. So I'm a user in this building, and I have a file, let's say this PowerPoint, locked for read and write. So that lock happens within this CloudFS node, but as you know, all the lock management is done between the nodes. So if someone is here in EMEA that wants to open this PowerPoint file, they still have to request the lock from the lock owner, which is this CloudFS node. So, and it'll say no, because this file is open for writes. So you can only get a read only. You can't write to it, which means that writes can't occur on this file to region 2 object store. Writes will only happen to this one, and then they'll be synced and come down if they have it open for read. If it's a byte range lock, same thing, except these two are in constant communication about, let's say it's an Excel spreadsheet, or let's say it's a portion of Revit that is open. These two are in constant communication if they're collaborating. Yes, the IO, the write, will be synced locally and pushed across. But as you know, with our byte range locking, there's also deltas that are sent between the CloudFS nodes. So that way they're immediately updated and on the same back-end version. As you know, CloudFS doesn't do versioning, but on the back end it does. Every change revs it so that they know which internally allocated version of the file that they're on, so that if you want to make a change to a byte range, you're making a change to the right version. So there's no overwrites, no corruption, and this sync can still be done asynchronously. Regional sync is turned on in AWS and Azure. Our team can help you with that. We've also put it in the release notes and in the documentation. So they turn on syncing differently. Then there's regional and cross-regional syncs. So we can help you with that. But we have tested both. Both work globally. We support up to 4 regions, and there's absolutely no reason for that, other than our support wants to talk to you as to why you want to make more than 4 copies, because it's going to get expensive. And it's not money you're sending to Panzura, that's money that you're sending to AWS or Azure. Because again, you're making 4 copies of the same object store. And keep in mind, these are copies. So what you can also do is use this for HA, right? If region 1 object store goes down, it fails, somebody deletes it for some reason, this red region will, this red CloudFS node will connect to region 2 automatically. If you have 2, 3, and 4, you can just put an order of priority for failover. So you can use this for HA, but it is not quite the same HA as cloud mirroring, because this all has to sit within the same cloud provider. So if you're doing cloud mirroring, you're probably syncing to a different and probably less expensive cloud provider. That's not the case here. This all has to sit within AWS or Azure. Can you do this and cloud mirroring? Yes, but then you have way too much extra money, and you should buy more stuff from Panzura. Okay, hopefully this makes sense. And if you have any further questions, feel free to either ask in the chat or email me. So that is our object performance and reliability improvement in 8.5 for the object store. We've also added another level of high availability for the CloudFS nodes. And again, since there's a lot of new folks here, I'm going to talk about what the HA looked like prior to 8.5, and then I'll talk about what we've added, which is the third one there, instant node. Historically, we've had local HA, and what local HA was an active passive failover with exactly the same hardware. So you'd basically be running CloudFS on this node, and you'd have to have an exact duplicate over here that is waiting for the primary to die. So you're spending twice as much money on hardware, but if you need the high availability, it's worth it. We also had global HA, and global HA is for lock management only. Again, let's use California West Coast as an example. Let's say you have a CloudFS node on US West, and it was connected to an object store on US East, and that data center dies. California falls into the ocean. Not great. What would happen within the global file system, because the object stores in US East, is all of the CloudFS nodes still have access to the entire GFS, no problem. But if they try to open a file for read and write, that CloudFS node can't get access to the lock, because the lock manager for that file was the one in California that fell into the ocean. So that file becomes unavailable for read and write. It becomes available read only. What you need to do is bring up a global HA node to basically take over the locks for that failed CloudFS node, and then and it will announce itself as, hey, I'm the new lock manager for that failed CloudFS node. Ask me for locks. I got your back. So that was global HA. Some of you have it implemented, some of you don't. So, but that covers all of the failure scenarios. However, local HA is expensive, right? Because again, you have a second system doing nothing, waiting for the primary to fail. So now we have the concept of instant node, and instant node solves several problems. The first problem it solves is that you don't need to have a second piece of hardware just waiting for the primary to die, right? We use the available pool of resources that you have available for virtualization, the CPUs, the memory, and we will bring up another CloudFS node utilizing that available pool of resources. Think of it like vMotion. And I know that some of you out there were using VMware vMotion so that you didn't have to have a second CloudFS node. So if the primary hardware died, it failed over to another system, vMotioned over. That's fine. But this is not tied to the VMware infrastructure. So this system will come up inclusive of boot time in about 5 minutes. I was in IT for a while. There's the rule of the coffee break. How long can a system be down? A system can be down for as long as it takes a user to go, I can't access it. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I'm going to come back to my desk. And if it's still not accessible, I'm going to call IT. So that 5 minutes is probably within the realm of a coffee break. So it's an awesome solution if you don't need immediate failover. What it can also do, and I know some of you don't believe this, but we do have customers that are going away for Broadcom, or Broadcom is going away from them, and they need to move off of that VMware infrastructure onto another type of virtualization. And Instant Node can be used to do that because we're not tied to the virtualization. So if you want to bring up an Instant Node on a new hypervisor, you bring it up, the node comes up on that hypervisor because again, it's not tied to that infrastructure, to the hypervisor infrastructure, and it'll come up, and it's a quick migration of a node away from whatever virtualization infrastructure you want. The last use case is actually pretty awesome. If you know of impending doom, for example, you know a hurricane's about to hit Miami, what do? You can bring up an instant node, so you can move that CloudFS node away from Miami and into Tampa or into a different data center, connect it to the backend object store, and now you have a node that has been migrated to a different region, representing Miami, basically, and then move it back when the hurricane misses and, hits Destin or something. I have a question. Yes, the session will be available as a recording. It'll either be emailed to you automatically or somebody from marketing will email you a link to this recording. So yeah, it'll be available either way, and you'll get an email from somebody with a link to this. Yep. All right, so that instant node functionality, kind of awesome because it is not only an HA function, it is a migration function if you know impending doom's happening, or I guess it's also impending doom if Broadcom says you can't use their stuff anymore, so you can move off to KVM or whatever. Questions? Does the spin up time in Instant Node have anything to do with the number of snapshots? No. Licensing for Instant Node, free of charge, right? Because we don't really charge you on the amount of CloudFS nodes that you have. We charge you based on capacity, right? So most people that have large amount of capacity have more entitlements for CloudFS nodes than they really need. So if you're at that limit, let me know. Not a big deal. But there really is no licensing for Instant Node. It is just an available function when you go on 8.5. Okie dokie. Yeah. Also in 8.5, there are a lot of functions that we aren't going over here because they're not really features. They're what we would consider fixes. If you want to read the release notes, we are speeding up node decommissioning. We're spending a lot of time in the next few releases and in the past releases fixing stuff that we think took too long, such as decommissioning, lock releases, all that kind of stuff. So you're going to see a lot faster just operations on the back end of CloudFS than you've seen in the past. What we're doing is we're really targeting this towards HA for the enterprise and for our existing customers that have these use cases. We have had customers beta testing this, beta testing both the regional store and the instant node functionality. So this is pretty rock solid. All right. Other awesome things. RBAC support. So role-based access control is available for Okta SSO. So for all of you Okta fans out there, it is available to you now. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about today, and we kept it to half an hour. Last thing I'm going to talk about today is storage tiering support is now available in Azure as it was in AWS. This doesn't get enough attention. So I see another question came up. I'll answer that in one sec. So with storage tiering support, yes, we support on the back end auto tiering by AWS and Azure between the hot, the medium, and the cold tiers. Those moves will happen automatically. If you turn that function on in AWS and in Azure, 30, 60, 90 days, it'll move to the cold tier. But as you know, CloudFS nodes cache locally all the hot data. So why do you need it to move from hot, medium, and cold? This function, since we talk at the API level to the object stores, you can configure CloudFS to automatically place the data on the cold tier of that object store. So in that you turn on multi-tiering, but then have everything automatically placed onto the cold tier. Why would you do that? Because you get charged twice by your hyperscaler. You get charged for the hot tier of storage, and you get charged for the move, for the API call. So basically, you get charged twice to move it. If the data's hot, it's sitting on the CloudFS node anyway. So why not just auto put it on cold, unless you have a reason not to? It'll save you money, and it'll save you money. All right, it'll save you money twice for the tiering and the API call. All right, questions. Does instant node address a site issue where the filer is? I may have understood the first item I lied. Was the filer crashes, network filer outage? Yeah, so Jason, we can go deeper into this if I understand the question. A site issue. So if the site issue is, the site's about to lose power, you can move it to a different site. Let's say it's a planned outage. You can move it to another data center. You can move that CloudFS node to the cloud. You can move it somewhere else. Geofencing is not coming in Q1, but it is out there because that was one of the first thoughts that I had for regional store is geofencing, and it is a roadmap, but it is not roadmap for Q1. Now that happens. Okay, I want to add the previous question. What happens if the original filer instant node takes over? So instant node takes over, and then you have to make the failback happen. It's not going to be automatic. It will basically be your instant noding from one instant node to another. So back to the 5-minute failover time, failback time. Hopefully that answers that question. But yeah, geofencing will be awesome because obviously for all the compliance issues, and regional store is kind of made for that functionality, isn't it? So we know about that, and yeah, that'll be huge. We have another way to solve geofencing with Symphony, and that is an open system. So it's not CloudFS only. So if you do have a need for geofencing, we have a way to skin that cat. But it's not native to CloudFS only. Okay. So I'm going to leave this open for any other questions that pop up for a couple of minutes. Okay, would applications like AutoCAD have issues with storage tiering? No, because you're cached locally. So all that entire file or every component of that file that's been used is cached on the CloudFS node. So it will not have problems with storage tiering. My recommendation is write directly to the cold tier. Because it's still instant access. Okay. Thank you very much. Again, you have my email directly. If you have any questions, if you want to talk Symphony, if you want to talk training LLMs, there will be a metadata harvesting webinar coming up soon. I'll put that on the calendar shortly. It is released. So if you want it, talk to support. But it is available. It's released and it's pretty rock solid. It's kind of awesome. Thanks, everybody.